back. Boom, 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 got it. Cool. And just like on all of our videos, nothing goes out until there's any review. And we're very well aware of any sensitivities, so we can always cut that out in post-production. But we like to have the full thing fully recorded. This is a 51 Vets event. And for background, 51 Vets is a nonprofit that helps transitioning veterans primarily from communities such as special operations and fighter pilots to transition into the workforce. And the three paths that we primarily focus on are, number one, the finance community. So within investment banking, private equity. The second path is within consulting. So your Bain, BCG, McKinsey, KPMGs, et cetera. And then the third path is within tech startups or venture communities. So those are kind of the three general paths. And we like to do series of events like this where we get to dive into particular topics such as a LinkedIn profile review, or on Tuesday, we did a private equity workshop where we had 3 people and they went through the life cycle of a deal. So the focus of today is to really go through resume reviews, because a lot of people don't necessarily hear the feedback that employers are thinking. And we want to give that feedback so others can learn from it. And so what we're going to do today is go through some resumes, and then let's just kind of give your top of mind feedback in just like candid, no BS, unfiltered, what you're actually thinking as you're looking at this. And hopefully these will be some great examples for other transitioning veterans to really learn from. Before we get started, Billy, do you have any other comments or questions, or anybody else have any comments or questions?
And from my side.
Well, good, cool. So who's on, before we get to the resumes, Billy, what is the order that you wanted to go in from the resumes? And then we'll go into the intros from others on the team.
The order we'll do for the resumes, we'll do Scott's first because he's here. Then we'll go into Brendan Lorton's. I've got Matt Byington, Eric Zielinski, and then myself last.
Awesome.
Because I'm here.
Oh, save it for last. Nice there, organizer.
Just to get, if we have time, you know.
I'm sorry, we're going to do that in reverse order. Mr. I just got into Warden. All right, so let's do that. And Billy, do you have the resumes ready to go to pull up? All right, cool. So let's first do some intros from the kind of the panelists here. And Erin, would you mind giving some background?
Sure. So Erin Carroll, I'm a partner at Braddock Matthews. We're a retained executive search firm. We have offices in New York and Boston, and we focus almost exclusively within the private market space, private equity, private credit, and across all functions at those organizations. So investment roles and non-investment professionals, whether that's investor relations, deal sourcing, legal, finance, talent, and operating partner work. We work throughout the US very broadly.
And do you also cover all seniority levels, or is there?
Yes, sorry. So VP through partner level hires, typically.
Okay, great. Yep. Jeremy?
I'm a partner with the Riverside company. We're a global private equity firm. Been 24 years in private equity, half of that doing deals kind of soup to nuts in the small firm environment. And then 12 years ago, switched over to the front end of the process. And so I oversee business development at Riverside, and the exit processes roll up to me as well, and a couple other things. And I'm on the advisory board of 51 Vets.
Jeremy, about how many people are on the BD team?
In North America, 14, and then we have colleagues in Europe and Australia as well.
Okay. All right, and on the Riverside now, Mara.
Hi everyone, my name is Mara Edgar. I am the Managing Director of Human Capital for the Riverside Capital Appreciation Fund, which is our flagship fund. So I'm a colleague of Jeremy's. I am new to Riverside. I've been here for about 6 months, but not new to talent in private equity. About 25 years leading talent, both at the fund level. So I've done recruiting for deal team and owned sort of that end-to-end recruiting cycle, everything from associate recruiting, very entry level, to post-MBA VP, all the way up to senior partner recruiting. About 10 years ago, I switched to platform and portfolio side. And so I deal with portfolio recruiting, mostly for C-level executives, but do frequently get involved in sort of mission critical, sometimes sub C-level roles. And that's sort of in all functional areas in our portfolio facing companies. And I met Jordan earlier in my tenure here, but I have experience working previously with the Honor Foundation. So I've worked in the veteran space for a while, and feel really passionate about the work that you all are doing here. So have had some experience working in a similar capacity with a prior fund.
Awesome. Sarah?
Are you talking about Sarah Sculley?
Yeah, Sarah.
Sarah
Sorry.
Sculley is sitting on the board for Sisters of Service that we're looking to partner with in the future to help bring more women into 51 vets. Sarah, if you want to give like a 1 minute on
Yeah,
Sure.
sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Sculley. I currently volunteer with an organization called Sisters of Service that has helped with the evacuation of female Afghan special operations veterans to the United States, helping them in their resettlement process through mentorship and advocacy. I was very fortunate to have been deployed with Billy in 2020. So good friend of mine, and he, told me about everything you guys are doing. It sounds great. So I'm just here to listen and learn today. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Peyton, Scott, Victor, Brent, and then we'll go into resumes.
Hey, everyone. First of all, thanks for volunteering your time to help all of us out. It's super awesome of you guys. I'm a retired 21-year Air Force Special Operations guy calling in airstrikes. I've been out of the military for 2 years, looking to switch from the defense industry, where I'm doing business development right now, and move into more of an entrepreneurship role and kind of take a little bit more charge of my own future.
Awesome. Scott?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Scott Rathke, currently in San Diego, California, finishing up my 20-year career as a Navy SEAL, and looking forward to hearing from the panel, and always looking to get, tighten up my my resume. It's been reviewed by folks in the Honor Foundation. So thank you, Mara, for all your help in the past, not with myself, but with other Honor Foundation alumni. And so looking forward to hearing the panelists contribute. So thanks again.
There we go. Victor, Brent, and then Lauren. Good to see you. And we'll jump into resumes.
Hey guys, Victor Reyna. Echo, thank you for taking time. Transitioning Green Beret after 20 years, looking to get into the consulting industry.
Fantastic. Brent?
Good afternoon, everybody. Brent Spohr, another transitioning 20-year Navy guy, naval aviator, currently stationed in San Diego. I'm looking to get into real estate private equity. Looking forward to hearing the panel.
Lauren?
Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm trying to dial in by phone. I, for some reason, can't hear all of you, but I'll just go ahead as if you can hear me. I'm Lauren from Arsenal Capital Partners. I'm part of our human capital team here, focused on everything under the talent umbrella, recruiting, onboarding for our fund at the firm. So all of our investment professionals, finance, operations, and then also help with some of our strategic projects for our C-suite and boards at our portcos. Nice to meet you all.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all very much. And let's kind of do our first resume review, and then we'll go in the order of Erin. There we go. Cool. All right. Erin, would love to kind of hear your just kind of thoughts, stream of consciousness as you're going through this, and then we'll go Mara, and then if Lauren jumps on, if her audio is fixed, we'll go to her.
Sure. Well, I have to first say, I feel like a complete underachiever reviewing every single resume that was sent to me. So first, thank you to each and every one of you for all that you've done for our country. And every firm should hire you to do something. So thank you. I guess just to start, I thought Scott's, I actually don't have that much critical constructive feedback for many of them. I looked and I'm like, wow, they've all been like professionally written, like the right things are bolded, sentences where like they're the periods where they're supposed to be periods. I thought what stood out to me about Scott's versus the others were the knowledge, skills, and experience part, like the fact that you were able, because I think one of the hard things, at least as a recruiter, and all kind of financial services are all private equity oriented, to be able to draw parallels from like what you do day to day and just the language that's used, the descriptive words that are used. I think as a recruiter, we're trying to piece like, okay, this is what our client wants. This is what you do. Like, how does it parallel? And like, where are you spiking, right? So then we can kind of be able to draw those parallels like for our clients when they're reviewing your resume. And I thought what stood out about Scott was he was able to kind of outline, like, here are like the 3 top things that, you have accomplished. I mean, so much more, but like, if you were to categorize them, this is where your kind of top skill set is. And I think being able to present that like on the first page, I think was really impactful, candidly. It was helpful to me.
Erin, can we go Billy, can we go to the top, and would you mind zooming out to maybe 100%? And love to hear, Erin, your thoughts around the summary. Do you like this? Do you not? What should go in the top? What are you first kind of thinking about in this very top?
That's interesting. I mean, we see so many resumes. I don't know if I feel strongly about the summary of qualifications. Candidly, I don't really read it that often. I am looking at, where has this person been? What has this person accomplished? Are they career successes? And a number of other things. Are they located in the right place? Like those types of things. I don't personally spend a ton of time with qualifications. I'm usually looking for that throughout the resume.
Okay. Mara, what's your thoughts on this? And kind of given Scott's background, 20-year Navy, would you rather see like 20-year Navy SEAL trying to get into real estate private equity, or what are your thoughts on having something at the top?
Yeah, so I 100% agree with Erin on sort of the top knot skill set, because one of the things I think that's a challenge, and Erin highlighted it well, is you have to translate, what you're very good at and bring from your years of experience to a completely different industry, right? And so it's almost like, how do you shorthand that skill set? Because one thing you're interfacing with Erin, myself, with everybody on this panel who are very sophisticated readers of resumes, and you might not always have somebody who's going to be able to parse the information. So you want to make it as easy as possible for your buyer, who is the person looking at your resume, to understand exactly what the value proposition is of your candidacy. And if you're interfacing with financial sponsors, they are trying to de-risk the hiring process. And so to the degree you can translate very simply what your value proposition is into that buyer, that will get you, sort of round peg, round hole faster. So specific and concrete feedback to this, really like the knowledge and experience call out. That's something that you see in somebody who's mid-career and might be pivoting into a different sort of, adjacent career structure. On the skills and the summary of qualifications, like Scott, when you had said originally, like what you were going after, it's not obvious to me, like what your call to action is. So like you said, you want to be, and I can't remember exactly what you said, what you were targeting for your job, but, I would be very curative around making it tailored to that buyer. Remind me again, Scott, what did you say you wanted to focus on?
I didn't say anything that I was focused on,
Okay.
but this is very general. A general approach, not a specific industry that I have targeted, but definitely agree with you that I would language it a little bit differently per the industry that I was looking for. But this is just more of a general.
Okay, understood. Okay.
Do you mind if we scroll down a little bit to the leadership of multidimensional? And there's kind of that area right here. Love to hear your kind of thoughts around to what extent should you bold things like $25 million training budget, or kind of key facts and figures? Erin,
again, like we see so many different things. you could also put your photo on it if you'd like. I think, calling out though, like if it has to be tied though, like Mara said, I think to a certain like outcome. Like if your goal is to find a role in real estate, private equity, like what within those descriptive paragraphs like would tie to your ability to pivot to real estate? And I would maybe highlight those specific things. I think when it is, when you're drawing the attention to something, like it obviously should be, very important, number one, but it should tie to the reason or to where you're looking to go. Like if you want to be an investor, then I wouldn't necessarily, kind of point to something that doesn't have anything to do with investing necessarily, or like where you couldn't tie some sort of commonality to that.
Okay.
I would say, if you were looking for one, sort of takeaway, that to the degree you can condense some of the language. I mean, Erin, I don't know if you've statistically ever kind of mapped how long people actually look at a resume, but it's very quick. And so you want it to be super punchy. And so that's why things like bold and the bullets and all of those things matter. Because I think people look at resumes for, order of magnitude, a very short amount of time. So, if you can truncate a little bit of this and make it a sort of a little bit, I could make some specific suggestions, but, to the degree that there are some bulleted things that are, easy call outs, look at your personnel, how many people you've managed. I mean, that's an incredible size of team, the budget that you've been responsible for, those are definitely translatable skills, to any role you're going to have, you're, essentially managing a P&L and you're managing a huge headcount.
I don't know if anyone said this yet, but in the top section, if you scroll up a little bit where you go through the summary, I think of that as like your elevator pitch. If you had 30 seconds in an elevator with someone to tell them exactly what you're looking for and why you're qualified, that's your chance to do it. So like Mara was just saying, I would put the largest team you've managed, the largest budget or P&L that you've owned, the number of years of experience you have, and really just make it punchy right there about this is who I am and this is what I'm looking for. And that's going to be the first couple lines that someone reads before they then go and kind of just scroll down and see the different places or different line items on your resume. So that would be my suggestion.
Do you mind if we do a slow scroll through this? And it would be great to hear what are the facts and figures, or what is the most interesting things that you're seeing, Erin, Mara, and Lauren, as we kind of do a slow scroll through this? What are the top 3 things that he should be saying?
A team of almost 300. I don't know if that's the largest because we haven't gotten through it all yet, but that's great. Yep. $25 million budget.
I don't know if you're looking for international or domestic too, Scott, but, the fact that you have a lot of global experience here, and I don't know if you're interested in targeting, places where you need security clearance, but I know a lot of, some of the big tech companies require, top security clearance. So that might be relevant to whoever your buyer is, because that is a differentiator for you that you have that, both of those things. And that you have conversational, I think I saw you in Mandarin somewhere in your background too. That is a singular defining characteristic about your background.
And Billy, can you go down to that? So this right here in the, Scott, what does an 05 mean in business language? Like, is that
I would say
VP, a director, an MD, or what does that mean?
It's senior officer. It's not the senior officer, but it's like, I'm trying to think of how you
It's C-suite. It's C-suite.
Yeah,
From a
for
guy
sure.
who gets
Brent,
commanded by
Brent,
him,
you're
it's C-suite.
You're an aviator. Where are we? We VPs?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of, that's I'm trying to pin down, because it's odd, right? Because if you like throw in like a 3-star in there, it like skews the whole like rank statistic. But I think 05 is probably VP-esque.
Okay.
Yeah, I would
So-
say so. And that is in, if you think even the GS world, it's like, you know, a GS 14 or 15 level is kind of where that 05 is, which is, you know, right below the then civilian side, you know, admiral or general officer ranking. So it's just right there on the cusp of very senior leadership of a company.
So could we say, for example, you know, if you were an 05 in 2018, we could call it like 4 years of VP equivalent experience, managing 200-person teams, $25 million budget, or something that's in the, what are the highlights here? You know, something at the top that speaks more business language. I was going to say English, but
I think that would work good for me too. Though. You know, Jordan, it's English.
What Scott, in looking at this, before we go on to maybe actually Billy's, because I think it's a good comparison. What do you think are some of the 3 highlights that you're most proud of that have like hard facts and figures?
It goes back to, I think, the last 3 jobs I've had, you know, transforming the entire naval special warfare community at a strategic level, you know, looking at how to optimize an entire community and restructure it in an entirely different mission set, doing things as we pull out of different places, and you're moving people all over the place, and you're managing the entire enterprise doing all that. That's a big move and a big lift to manage that whole shop with the amount of folks that I have and the civilian personnel that are all under me. And then the other 2 pieces of just being the second guy in Iraq, you know, managing the 1,300 people as we moved forces out of Iraq, or from Syria into Iraq, from the president's orders for us to do it in a 90-day period. We were able to do that. We were able to easily come up with a great plan and effectively get our folks and our equipment out of there very quickly, while maintaining operations in Iraq. And that was my job to do that while my colonel ran operations in Iraq. I focused the effort in Syria. And then the last piece is being the training officer, or being the leader at the command who trains all the special operators from SEAL and SWIC. That's the maritime special operator. We manage all the phases of from beginning to the very end of pinning what these guys go with, the character about who they are, and kind of getting leaders in front of them at each point during their phases as they go through, and how important it is for that leadership development. But those are, I think, if you look at it as a whole, those are my last 3 jobs are what I would say things I'm most proud of. And although the earlier assignments, I didn't have them all on here. I mean, I've done 10 deployments, so it's like all of my stuff's been great, and I've been able to lead at all levels, and it's been a great career. So I mean, I picked the top 3 there because I could easily go back to 2006 and say I did great things in Iraq and MMI, but I chose those 3 there. I would highlight.
And Scott, that's, I mean, amazing. And I think one of the challenges is, being able to translate that, not knowing who is going to read your resume. Like, I would have never known that you were the number 2 person that led, 1,300 people out of Iraq. Like, reading that statement, like, I get the chills even saying it out loud. And I feel like that's like almost like knowing your audience and thinking like, we are simpletons, like we don't know what you're talking about, and almost, dumb it down a little bit for us. And it's hard because I think on a resume, you have to brag a little bit. And I will say, like, reading these resumes, like, they're written like very factually, and it, again, like complete, like, underachiever here, but you have to be able to position yourself like this is like your brag sheet, right? Like, this is what I've done. And I mean, obviously you're part of a greater organization and you shouldn't always say I, and I did this, but I think saying like number 2, you know, leaders do so on and so forth, I think that's actually would be impactful. But I also think, you know, just looking at now your resume, we're having this conversation, going back to the first page, like the summary of qualifications. And as Lauren said, you know, kind of that's your elevator pitch. And also like, what do you want to do? And obviously you can change that sentence every time you send out your resume, but like, what do you want to do? And then I would actually probably put something instead of like, maybe even in between, like knowledge, skills, and experience, put, you know, kind of top accomplishments or, you know, kind of the, you know, highlight career highlights, right? And say that you were the number 2 person that led 1,300 people out and, you know, trained, you know, I don't know, 1,300, 1,400 Navy SEALs, right? And manage a staff of 277, like, and everything you just actually said, transform the entire, you know, 10,000 military and civilian members, like where they live and all of that. Like, I would put it on the front page, like just bullet it out and be tight though. Like Mara said, like, I think we are looking for almost like the less words, the better type of thing, because you do want to hit it home. But I would actually carry those things into the first page.
And Scott, I would just say, in listening to you here, so like it was so much easier for me to translate. Like I wouldn't have no idea where I would plug you into a business, but listening to you, I'm like, oh, he's a COO, right? I mean, like he's an operator who brings a ton of strategic insight, like to the skill set, or a chief of staff, because you got all these project management skills, and like you're going to run a really tight timeline, and you're going to really clear, you know, you could run a PMO office for like a company, but I wouldn't have gotten that immediately. But now, because like Erin said, we are simpletons, I can translate what you just described into something that makes sense in the business context, which is like you're a really solid operator who, if you're given a task, you're going to run it to the ground, and it involves people and complexity. And, you know, probably you hopefully never have to put yourself in the line of fire in a business context, but you can do it under extreme duress. So like, you know, you can handle pretty much anything that's going to get thrown your way from an operating perspective, but I wouldn't have gotten that. So to me, you know, just looking at your resume, I'm like, he's an awesome operator. He would be a great COO.
What do you think as a idea here at the top where it just says summary, instead of a paragraph, having 3 bullets? Bullet 1, number 2 SEAL in Iraq, you know, leading 1,300 people. Number 2, you know, just like bing, bang, boom. It's like, oh, I get it. And maybe that 3rd bullet or 4th bullet is looking for VP of Ops / COO positions. So immediately allows them to see it. Because after I read those first 2 or 3 bullets, I'm like, all right, I want to talk to this person as opposed to read the rest.
I do think underneath the summary qualifications, where you have your top box, your elevator pitch, is that you know, frequently you'll see them for people who call out their top accomplishments, and that's where they bullet those things, Jordan. So it's almost like there's a capstone sentence of like who you are, what you want, call out for some of the things, and then you can put the knowledge, skills, and expertise underneath there, but it just makes it super punchy. So the top one is like a capstone, your elevator pitch. Then you call out some of those specific accomplishments, and those bullets could go there. And then you can put some of the other, you know, supporting stuff underneath it that you want. But those are your grabbers, right? That's going to tell people immediately what you're looking for, who you are, why should they have a conversation with you, and then really make it easy for them to see sort of those functional accomplishments. And I've seen that a lot on resumes too, for people who are, you know, pivoting mid-career. They're trying to think about going from a CFO to a COO role. How do you translate some of your prior experience into a new opportunity? So summary qualifications, elevator pitch, you know, sort of call out for your, you know, specific, Erin, I forgot what you called it, but I've seen it. It's called different things in resumes.
Yeah, I think Jordan actually said it. Well, the like accomplishments or highlight. What
I think you called it a capstone.
Did I? No, that's Mara. Mara did.
Did Mara call it a capstone?
Yeah, Mara did. Yeah, it's something like, you know, career highlights, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And this
I
is
got a
really
question for you.
One last thing. I would say, and I don't know, Mara, Lauren, what you feel about this, but actually saying if you're open to relocation has been like a huge thing. Like, I feel like I'm asking that question over and over and over again. And, you know, some firms are obviously open to people living elsewhere. Some firms are not. But, you know, obviously I know looking at this, at least I think you're based in San Diego. like, I think under this, within like the summary of qualifications where you have that kind of like elevator pitch, I think the last sentence can be open to relocation. And if you're not open to relocation, then don't put that, obviously. But if you are open to relocation, I think you should put that.
My question to the panelists, you know, I know a lot of people have different opinions about this. 2 pages versus 1 at somebody my level. Thoughts?
I mean, I'll jump in, but I mean, I think you could shrink the font size. Like, I think the size is large, and I think you could go smaller. I personally see so many resumes that are 2 pages. I'm not concerned with a 2-page resume personally.
I agree. Everything Erin said. I think a different font, smaller, and then you can tighten up some of the bullets. And I think 2 pages is very common. I don't think it's a knock on anybody, but the first page really has to matter for them to flip over to the second page.
And I guess my other question on that, oh, go ahead, Lauren.
I was going to say, even some of the spacing, like I see a big space right after, right before knowledge, skills, and expertise. You could probably even shrink that a little bit, and that'll give you a little bit more real estate on the first page.
Yeah, a lot of that's just trying to give white space as well. I mean, again, I'm by no means can I take credit for a lot of this stuff other than putting it all kind of together. There has been some wonderful people that have helped me, people like Mara, that put this thing together. I cannot take credit for all that, but I appreciate your feedback on that. I guess my other question for the panelists is, I mean, it depends on who you even talk to. How often are you actually, am I going to be sending this, like, without even knowing I'm sending this to Mara, but she doesn't even know who I am? Meaning, like, I'm almost going into a calculator. Or have I talked to, you know, somebody, Jordan, and Jordan says, hey, yeah, I really like this guy, and send your resume to Mara. Is that how we're doing things these days? Or, because I hear different things.
You probably get 3 different answers based on our seat. So, I mean, you know, from my perspective, we generally leverage executive search partners unless it's a recruiting partner. So it's a warm intro. But you as the buyer, you as being on that journey, I could see you either having an introduction made, right, which is obviously a different interaction with whomever you're talking to, versus, hey, I see a really awesome job on Amazon that I might want to apply for. Let me network through there, and I'm sending it in cold. So I think it depends on the avenue, you know, if you're going through a warm intro, which can be a variety of ways, or if you're applying, you know, sort of as an active applicant, that would be kind of a different, you know, read from my perspective. I don't know, Lauren or Erin, if you have anything else on that front.
I think it's all of the above. I think people have the most success when there is a warm introduction. Just someone's more likely to, you know, read the resume, respond, find the time. I know others have reached out via LinkedIn cold and have just put a little bit about themselves in a little blurb and attached the resume, and sometimes that works. I think when you start applying through, you know, databases or just job boards, I think those resumes tend to pile up. So if you apply that way and you can find someone who you know, who you have a connection to, or someone else at the company that you can reach out to and do an info session with, that might help your resume come to the top. But I agree, at least with our firm, Arsenal, we're a private equity firm, we tend to use recruiters, which is probably the easiest avenue to get an easy intro.
I will say the VC ecosystem is slightly different because I spent some time in the VC space. So a lot of the VCs they will post their jobs directly on places, but if you can network through their talent partner, if they have one, you know, a lot of times the people who have, like my role, who's portfolio facing, will have an internal talent partner who's doing all of their recruiting. So if you have a target fund that you want to work at because you like some of what they're doing in the portfolio company, the VC ecosystem, frequently you can find out who the talent partner is who's recruiting on behalf of that fund. And that's probably the easiest way for you to get, you know, access to a particular fund. So it's slightly different, I think, the lower end of the market, you know, earlier stage companies.
I'll say, like, just as a recruiter really quickly, like if you're going to send your resume to a recruiter, most firms, you know, try to collate that to like either one person or a service that will then take that resume and like put it into our system and code it and so on and so forth. I think like the email like needs to also say like exactly what you want to do, because the person reading your resume, you know, may not be the recruiter that has like any idea, or maybe they'll screen it, like, you know, kind of scan it, but it depends if it's cold. I mean, but I think saying like, I would like to be, you know, a COO or, you know, a head of ops, or that will, it's almost like keywords. Everybody's looking for keywords. And I think that's something to think about if you are sending something cold, like what are those keywords that you want them to remember you by? You know, COO candidate, like, okay, we're going to tag you as a COO candidate.
Erin, how do you actually, let's say that Scott sends you a resume and he's into your system, he's interesting to your general clientele. What does that look like on your side with like the CRM? Do you actually have a box that says VP of Ops, COO, or like, what should they be thinking about?
Jordan, that's our secret sauce. I can't tell you. Yeah, so we code everyone, and in a lot of different ways, very honestly. We have a military attribute, for example, right? So when we're trying to pull, you know, various like diversity attributes, like military is an attribute that we use. And, you know, typically, you know, the key areas for us are what we call position and description, like where roughly is this person in an organization, and COO could be a position, right? Description would be like firm administration or leadership, to give an example. And then really what we do are more kind of attributes, and there's hundreds of them, very honestly. But we do have like mapping to future roles where, you know, someone has said like, my next role, I want to be a chief investment officer of a family office. So we will tag like, you know, career path, like CIO family office, and be able to map that. So when we run a family office search for a CIO, which, you know, we do a fair amount of, we know who already wants to be in those roles pretty quickly. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect science, very honestly, and you're only as good as the last attribute you click. But generally, that's how we do it.
Awesome. Billy, do you mind if we go to yours, because it's more finance, MBA related, and kind of different use case? Awesome. Let's look
Thank
at
you
that.
to the panelists. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. All right. Mara, do you want to lead kind of like the review of this?
Yeah, sure. I would say, having recruited deal team professionals in prior lives, that this reads like a deal team resume. So looking at this is what I would say, you know, I would see coming through like, you know, associate recruiting typically. So font, everything from structure, so font, education, sort of how everything's structured on this very much reads like what I would see coming out of, you know, a Wharton kind of career development.
Well, that's good to hear.
So font, the spacing, you know, even the sequencing of the information, and Erin does a lot of deal team recruiting too, but I have freshly come off of associate recruiting, so I have some recent comps. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, this one to me is really, you know, you go by Billy, is that what they call you? Billy? Okay, I didn't want to presume. William O'Neill is such a stately name. I didn't want to, you know, shortchange.
So professional. It's so professional.
Even the name it's got you lined up right there. Yeah, I think this is a really tight resume. For you, I think it's going to be, you know, how are you going to leverage your experience, probably more in your internships when you're in B school, to get into what kind of role and fund you want. To me, you know, you're going to be starting at a different point in the ladder. And so thinking about like, are you going to start as an associate? Are you going to start as a VP? I mean, I see more of your challenges being around thinking through. I mean, your GPA is, you know, like we had a cutoff when I worked at TA where you wouldn't get looked at unless your GPA was like a, you know, 3.85 for recruiting and you were a top 10 school. So like all of the things that top funds are looking for somebody with, you know, an investor's background is here. It's just, where do you start on the ladder? So I don't have a ton of feedback on the experience. It's just how to position yourself to get in higher on the sort of the career curve than starting out as an associate, you know.
100% makes sense. And I think that's just an upward battle for all veterans coming out of MBA programs, you know?
So, I mean, I guess I would ask, Erin and you do a lot more on the deal team recruiting. How do you think about somebody who hasn't had sort of 2 years on buy banking, gone back and got an MBA? Are there situations, and there are funds that have more operationally oriented investing groups that will leverage you on the operating side as well as the investing side, where I think you could have some crossover where you don't have sort of the pure play financial, investment banking chops. But Wharton's certainly going to give you a leg up. They have a great alumni, opportunity for you. But I'm just thinking about how do we advance you on that career ladder is kind of where my head went to. I have no comments on the resume. I think it's fantastic, but that was my initial read.
I mean, I can jump in. So I do have a couple of comments on your resume. So I think the first line, MBA candidate at the Wharton School, I would change that to say University of Pennsylvania, comma, the Wharton School of Business, or whatever the right term is. Just so it's consistent with like Norwich University, and you're missing like the University of Pennsylvania. It's a Ivy League school, like it should be there front and center, like you earned it, you did it, like put it there. And then I would put like MBA candidate, obviously in like probably in the line below. So maybe it's 3 lines now. It's University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School, MBA candidate. And then I would change the graduation date. I would actually remove those dates. And I think next to MBA candidate, I think you can put like expected 2024. And I would say like one of the challenges, and this happened just looking at a couple of the resumes, some speak very clearly to like you would want to be an investor, like Eric. It was very clear, like he had internship. If you're there, I don't know if you're on this call, but that your internships, like you pursued internships that were concurrent, that were additive, that a firm could look at and say, okay, he has a bit of experience, maybe you'll have to take a step back versus your peers as far as title or responsibilities, but it was very clear. And I think Billy, that's going to be important for you. Like, what does that summer internship look like? Do you want to be in consulting? Then I would say try to get, obviously a consulting role. Similar for investments. And I think that next line, as Mara was saying, it reads very, it does read very similar to what we see as far as private equity investment professionals. I think your internship is going to really help build like the story of where you want to go. And sometimes people have internships in consulting and they realize they actually do not want to be in consulting, and they would rather be in investment banking or something like that. But you can cross that bridge when you get there. But I think like the real next bullet, the biggest impact is going to be where you have your internship.
Awesome. Do we want to go over to either Brendan's, or which one do you want to go to next, Billy?
Let's go to Brendan's. Eric is going to read very similar to mine because he is Wharton.
Yeah, Wharton.
Except he's got the summer internship, right? Because he's going to his second year. So we'll hold off on his for now. Brendan is not here. He's currently actually touring Primus Aerospace out of Colorado for a private equity job. So he's going to watch this as soon as he gets out of that.
Cool. Lauren, would you mind walking through it?
I've got no audio, Lauren.
Uh-oh, can you hear me now?
We got you.
Off. Audio off. Lauren, we lost you again on audio.
Okay.
We got
now
you.
Any better?
Good.
Not having any context on what Brendan is looking for, what jumps out to me is I just see nothing related to finance, if that's the direction that I think you said he was looking to go in. Is that right? So my recommendation here, again, would just be maybe a quick call out at the top before and above the experience. Billy, when we looked at your resume, there were some ties to, you know, Goldman and other experience. So for Brendan, I think it would be really helpful to understand what he's looking for and how his experience will then be tailored to that. So above that experience line, I'd probably put, again, like maybe 3 short sentences about what he's looking for in his next role. I'd also probably pull out some of, you know, these really impressive facts in here and metrics. I'm just trying to see which ones I would pull out. Yeah, I mean, clearly a ton of accomplishments, being ranked number 2, number 3 out of all these different officers. You know, I think I would just highlight broad level leader of large teams in different, in different parts of the Army, seeking X type of position within finance based on, you know, these leadership capabilities and, you know, interests. That's what I would put. I think in order to anchor yourself for what comes next, I really do think something up front would be helpful to tie it all together. Otherwise, I'm looking at all of the military experience, which is amazing, and there's such goodness in here. But bringing it to the forefront, what he's looking for, I think would really be helpful.
And also consistency between, it says 1 mil budget, but then down it says 30 million worth. And so just overall consistency. And then it feels like my eyes are, it's a little bit difficult to read. It feels like it needs more spacing.
Maybe the bullets too. So it looks like he's starting with maybe like 1 sentence, but then the bullet is directly under that first sentence, if that makes sense. If you see handpicked and then right under the H, that's where the bullet starts. I would maybe move the bullet indented to be closer to where the managed starts, because that will also make it pop, that first sentence of, okay, what do I want the attention to be on? And then what are the sub areas within? Does that make sense?
Jeremy?
And then on consistency, some of them have periods, some don't. If you scroll back to the top, it looks like a really small nit, but for some reason it catches my eye. If you're going to capitalize the B in the email address, then I'd capitalize the L, or I'd leave it all lowercase. For some reason, it just looks like it's sloppy. And then the question for the professionals here, Lauren and Mara and Erin, is I see a lot of people these days have removed their actual street address from the resume. Is that kind of gone to put your specific mailing address now, or what's the latest thinking there?
It's such a good question. I see it both ways. Erin, I don't know, and Mara, maybe there are sensitivities with certain roles. In finance, I still see it.
Yeah, I
What do you
still
think?
see it too. I mean, I am starting to see it more and more without it, and I think that is fine. You know, I think it's really personal choice, but I find more people are definitely becoming more private about where exactly, and also many of them were like transient for the last 2 years because they were, you know, maybe living in New York, but they were out in Colorado for a couple of months. So, but I think you can remove it, and I wouldn't say it's more or less professional. I don't, you know, my mind shift doesn't, I don't have like a different kind of take on it, but we are starting to see less of it.
Yeah.
Also, go ahead, Mara.
I was just going to say, I printed this too. So I know it's old school to print things because of trees, but this is one where like there's a bunch of white space on the bottom. And so this is one where I think you could actually take up more space, and the margins when you print it are really small. So I would look to have the margins be a little bit more. I mean, from a visual perspective, you know, Eric's resume is very good, and Billy, yours is too. Just from, you know, format, sort of overall structure. So this is one where I would, you know, probably optimize the rest of the resume to take up the full space and shrink the margins, because it does print kind of funny.
The other question that I had when I was reviewing it was, what did Brendan do between 2014 and 2016? Because there's like a gap of time there based on, and that's something that we look for all the time. Like, okay, what is your kind of career history? What are those career successes? Like, what took you from one role to the other? And that could be a typo, I have no idea. But I was like, okay, 2014, he graduates, from the military academy from West Point. Was there like training or something? And then
I'm pretty sure it's a typo because I know Brendan, and I'm pretty sure that he went straight from the academy straight to that platoon leader position. So I think that's
I would find it hard to
supposed.
believe that you graduate from West Point and get like 2 years off, like to do something. So I was wondering, like, where was he for those 2 years?
So if he was an Army infantry officer, especially conventional, before he went to Special Forces. So he graduated from West Point. He went to Ranger School. He went to Infantry Leadership Course. He did a bunch of he basically spent 2 years training after West Point.
Yeah.
So that's
I thought that could be it too. Yeah, but I would actually tell, I think he should add it. Because it does create, it creates a question, like where were you? And also that training is important, right? I mean, I think it just shows kind of even, a further commitment. So I think it doesn't need to be, kind of multiple bullets, but I think just noting the time from 2014 to 2016, he was in Ranger School and training.
For mine, I had like a 3-year gap of training for getting qualified in every aircraft, and I just did like a 1 bullet just to provide that continuity of timing.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that could be helpful.
Yeah.
I've seen sabbatical listed and traveled the world to a bunch of different countries. I think just putting clarity on what happened during that time is helpful. And I don't know what the group thinks about this. Would you move education down? Sometimes I like it at the top, but for this, I don't know, I might move it down to the bottom and then it's chronological. What do others think? And if he added that little blurb at the top to fill that space.
I see your point. I think he's almost at a stage of career where a lot of people keep it at the top right now. So it's still he's kind of like a tweener almost, right? But I could see moving it down makes sense. And that would give that nice space for a couple of sentences. That was my 1.2. I wasn't sure what he wanted to do, right? So how do you customize a resume and maybe even use different selection of words in your bullets below based on what you do want to do, what are you trying to, and use the language that a consultant would use so when they're reading it, it pops out to them if you were going to go into consulting.
Erin, is there a rule of thumb for how long ago? For me, I graduated 2019, so we're kind of getting long in the tooth on the MBA string. So does that for me go down below experience in that case?
You graduated MBA in 2019?
Mm-hmm.
Probably. There's really not I don't think a hard and fast rule, but what I find is individuals who are, kind of in a peer group that would be a traditional, when I think of a VP in private equity, you're probably in that call it 6 to 8 years of experience, right? And that's usually when they have, MBAs and there's, it's basically all of the business schools have helped you write your resume and they all look exactly the same and education is right on top because it is the most recent. Yep. I think that's what Lauren was kind of alluding to. It's actually, he's done so much since he's graduated, right? So maybe it should drop down. So it's just really stylistic. I think you could drop it down based on, the duration of your career probably at this point, now that, you're 2 years out of business school and you have done other things. But I think it is ultimately a personal, kind of stylistic thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in this case, my 2 cents would be drop it down because it's not the headline anymore.
Right.
You get to it eventually, but when you're trying to make this first impression, the last job was more impressive, frankly, because it compels senior leadership. And then back to the consistency thing, there's a capitalization issue throughout where somebody could look back and there's a number of these words that should and shouldn't be capitalized. So there's some cleanup there too.
What's
and is that the same group, the U.S. Army Special Forces 10th Special Forces Group, SFG, and then below it, 2020 to 2021, U.S. Army Special Forces 10th SFG? If so, I would just have the one header of U.S. Army Special Forces.
Yeah, he
10th
changed
Special
billets.
Forces.
He looks like he got promoted in billet, and so he put it as a second one, but it's the same unit.
Yeah, I think I would use that as the.
Yeah.
I would even take out Special Forces Group. I don't even know what that means. It's a Green Beret. That's the English here. Like Special Forces Group is only known primarily in the military community, but that's, you know, if I knew, okay, this person was a Green Beret for 5 years. All right, cool, legit. And another question is, like, I know when we were thinking about this for like other groups, like how much does it cost to produce for the United States to produce one Green Beret or one SEAL? I think it's like $2 or $3 million. So, you know, one, I see he went to, was it West Point? And, you know, what percentage of people get into that and graduate? Two, how many people get through Green Beret selection? And how much does it cost to produce one Green Beret? Like we want, and this is like saying that, you know, like our nation has spent a lot of time and money to produce this individual. Therefore, you should take a look at him. One other question is, what's the decision on like picture or no picture? Because they're going to see it when they go to LinkedIn.
Only if they're handsome. Only if they're handsome people.
Jordan, one comment
I'm not
before
a
I
big
drop
fan
off.
of pictures, but I've seen weirder things, to be honest. I would prefer, I think like if you're going to, for all of our clients on the buy side, we actually, so I think like historically a lot of search firms would like rewrite everyone's resume and they would drop them into like a format where every single resume looked exactly the same. So it didn't matter what your resume ultimately looked like because someone was either retyping it or they were dropping it into a format. I would say most firms have stopped doing that, and not all firms, but I think many firms have. And you know, what you present is what the client is seeing. So there's no scratching out of like whatever is there. Like if there's a typo, like they're going to see that there's a typo because we're not going to fix it. And I would say, you know, the comments that sometimes the clients make in reviewing resumes, I think probably to avoid a picture is better, at least in the private markets community.
I think it also just sometimes detracts, because then the first thing that you're looking at is this person, and then you're kind of like, you know, reacting to what you're seeing on the page. And so it just eliminates any sort of biases that might come from whoever is reviewing it. I think it's fine if you have a picture on LinkedIn, that's great if someone goes there to see it later, but let your resume speak about, I think, the experiences and the capabilities.
I 100% echo that. I mean, I think there's more risk than reward for putting one there. And so on balance, I agree. I think there's, you know, they're going to find out what you look like anyway, but you don't want that to be the first situation, you know, first thing that they judge you on.
Oh. Scott, you had a question or comment? Oh, he dropped. Never mind. All right. I think that is it.
I want to be sensitive to time. So if pros have to hop, by all means, like go for it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming with us.
I can stick around for a little while, guys, if you want to.
I've got Victor's resume as well. We will pull this up.
And as we're pulling that up, Mara, Lauren, and Jeremy, if you're available, would love to hear just kind of big picture winners and losers on resumes. Like, what are the big things like, oh my God, that just makes my life so much easier that I saw that? And what are the things that are like, oh my God, that is why I'm throwing this in the trash. I'm not even keeping it in my inbox or archive, but I'm deleting this. Mara, what are your maybe top two?
In general, I think typos and sort of just, you know, if you're presenting a C-level resume or an executive level resume, you know, attention to detail. And so I think just, you know, very basic, you know, some of the stuff that Jeremy pointed on the last resume, you know, take the time to have somebody read it and make sure that somebody's editing it for both grammar, format, consistency, you know, font size, spacing, just very basic, because, you know, attention to detail is something that you're asking somebody that of their time to look at it. You want to make sure that they're, you know, and you could get knocked out for a typo, you know, right away. I mean, people are gonna, so I would say out of the gate, that's sort of meets minimum. The other things I would say too, you know, if you're lobbing something through that really shows no thought. So like if you're sending a resume through that has nothing to do with the position that somebody is recruiting for, or it's addressed to somebody else. Like if you're writing a cover note and it's got somebody else's name on it, like that's a big no-no. So to me, that shows no like, you know, intention to apply for this or to be recruited for this particular job. So, you know, demonstrating that this one matters to you, not just I'm looking for any job, is really important. So, you know, if it takes 2 minutes to curate, you know, the top of your profile, do it, because it's going to show that you have intention for this position. And then, you know, I would say the next thing after I look at a resume is I immediately click on your LinkedIn profile. So make sure they're consistent. So if you're saying you did something on your resume, make sure that it's backed up and it's very consistent, that your public persona is very, very tight. You know, we look at people's backgrounds all the time. They're going to look for you on you know, Google you. They're going to match your LinkedIn. So I would just make sure that you're putting your best self forward, because you're really selling yourself, and that looks at, you know, all of your public, you know, persona, everything that you've done, your resume and your LinkedIn tick and tie. Those would be my comments.
Awesome. Jeremy, top 1 or 2?
I'd echo all of those, the typos, all that, but specifically the one I see a lot is they've clearly done a cut and paste in the email and the font changes. And it's just such an obvious call out that you didn't give a shit enough to retype it or to type a fresh email, that you really didn't think this through. And so it's unbelievable how much I see it, and it just looks so bad. It's unbelievable. Just type the thing fresh, or figure it out, test it if you need to. But all of Mars are great.
The other one I will say, and this is personal to me, is I get addressed as Edgar all the time. So people assume that I'm a man, and address the emails to Edgar. So, you know, that's an extra, like, take a second to look who you're addressing to. I mean, if I get an email addressed to Edgar, I delete it.
Well, and I think that also speaks to a larger point about the job application process, which is, instead of spray and pray, be a lot more thoughtful and do fewer things right. And then, so for example, if you spend a little bit more time reaching out to Mara, maybe there is something there, maybe there isn't. But if you spend a lot more time with her and that customized outreach, she or other people are more likely to say, hey, not really a fit here, but if you take a look at somewhere else. And so I think that goes back into the strategy of less spray and pray and more customized, more tailored, more surgical.
100% agree with that.
Lauren, what are your kind of top 2 or 3 takeaways, big on resumes, and then we'll go into Victor's here.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat anything the group has said, but it's certainly true. When I get something that has another company's name in it, it's immediately deleted. When I'm Lori or Laura, it drives me crazy. I think what stands out is when someone takes the second to go and look at my background and say, oh, you know, you spent time in Boston, and tries to make a personal connection. This is a relational business. It shows that you did write this specifically for me. Those emails always hit a little bit warmer and make me more excited to talk to someone. So where there is something that you can relate to or call out about someone else's background that you're reaching out to, I think the response rate will show that that's great.
Awesome. All right, let's go through Victor's here, starting at the top.
So this one is cold for you guys, because I know you guys didn't get this in your email. That was my fault. But so this is Victor's, and he's on the call, so I want to make sure we hit it too.
Mara, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so you're gonna have to bear with me while I lean in and read it really closely. Maybe can you make it a little bit bigger, Billy? I don't know if it's my eyes. So out of the gate, I like the profile. States very clearly U.S. Army Green Beret. Jordan, to your point, I think it's important, if you have a designation that translates into something that people know how badass you guys are, put it right out there, right? Because it's, you know, most people know, my cousin's an Army Ranger, he's a captain, and like that's cool, so just something that translates into the regular lexicon of civilians, I think is helpful. I really like that you call out strategic planning, operational implementation. So I like the top box a lot.
Do you like, there's a way to maybe edit this where you have 20-year Green Beret experience leading groups of 500 plus people or something like that?
Yeah, I think you can punch up some of the stuff that we had talked about in Scott's resume. I think a lot of the same principles apply, where you can pull out some of those key things that you want to highlight in your elevator pitch towards Lauren's point. So, if it's 20 years, leading teams of, blah, 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 with the number of, percentage of, the budget. So those call outs I think are really important in the top box. So a lot of my comment is very similar to what Scott had. You have a similar framework. We have strategic leadership and teamwork and complex problem solving. So I think from a framework perspective, a lot of the feedback that we gave Scott was very, very similar to what I would see here.
Is there a typo on 22 key stakeholders? Is stakeholders one word? Okay.
So, and I look at these skills, strategic leadership and teamwork. That's an awesome functional translational skill set. Complex problem solving, again, change management and process improvement. I would just, again, be very curative, and it's dense, so it's a little wordy, and it would take somebody a little bit to read through this. So just calling out a little bit more of the specifics, I think would be good. Like the fact that you manage 15,000 employees, I mean, that's massive. That's bigger than any company that we work with at RCAF right now, that you've worked with that huge of an employee base.
When I read this a capability resume to me, which I think is great, because that's what recruiters are looking for. They're trying to see competencies, capabilities. The one thing I would say, I think this is great, maybe at the bottom, if it doesn't already exist, without taking up a lot of space. Oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. We were going exactly where I was going. So maybe this isn't a good suggestion because it's already here. I was just going to tell you to list out the historical resume too, and you could do it even condensed. You could probably even take out some of this, because then right up front you have the capabilities. But then if someone also is more comfortable scanning, the years over time in the real titles, I think this is also helpful. So I apologize. It's here anyways. You beat me to it.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. One question I had, is I've like the other kind of participants, I've heard the chronological versus functional resume. Do you guys see a difference or a recommendation on when you should use the functional, like a half year or a cross between, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think because you guys are essentially, I think of you as career transitioners. You're pivoting, frankly, that a competency-based resume versus a chronological-based resume is what you would use if you're transitioning. If you were going into, a role that you had done 6 times successively, and, if you looked at somebody's resume, had been in the same role over and over again, chronological resume makes a great deal of sense because it's very linear. You're asking people to translate a skill set that you developed in a different profession into a new profession. And so I think for me, a competency-based resume that calls out those translatable skills is what makes sense for you guys.
Great, I appreciate it.
I don't know, Lauren, if you would agree, or Jeremy, if you would agree on that.
I do, and you can find the chronological on LinkedIn too. I think if there's space for it and you can condense it to help people see it easily, I think that's fine, but I definitely like the competency-based way that you outlined in the first page.
It looks great. I think one little nit is I would drop country of UAE and just put United Arab Emirates. Let's assume that the reader knows that United Arab Emirates is a country. And country of Jordan. They already saw UAE in the previous part, so they already realize it's international. The brain's already looking for the name of a country. I would just call it Jordan's Special Operations. I know that's a tiny nit, but the capitalization of the country just jumps out also, it's kind of just a very little thing you can clean up. But overall, looks really good.
Yeah, I agree. Victor, what do you want to do?
I'm in the consulting kind of pathway right now. I have a couple of interviews lined up over the next couple of weeks.
Great. And are you getting traction from them? Are they seeing it? Is it?
Yeah, this resume was what I used for McKinsey, Deloitte, Accenture, and actually today I just had my interview with Deloitte, or my final interview with Deloitte. So it seems to be going okay.
That's great.
Same comment again. If you scroll up, there's a unnecessary capitalization of the word executives. Doesn't work after the word Jordan. Scroll up again. You can search for the word executives. That's capitalized. It shouldn't be.
See it. Thank you.
It looks good.
You guys don't have any issue with the bottom. I don't know if that was just my wanting to throw some education certification somewhere versus the top.
I think that's where it belongs, given your tenure.
Okay, great.
What is Excelsior University? I'm not familiar with Excelsior University.
It's an online college that was the fastest way I could get to a bachelor's and become an officer.
Okay. Okay. And you know what, for what it's worth, I do see people drop dates, at a certain point. I don't think maybe I have my graduation date somewhere out there. I think I've hidden it at this point. I don't know. But people obviously can do the math backwards from when you started. So it's not that closely held of a secret.
Yeah, and then same comment again. Some of these have periods and some don't. So just have somebody give you a second set of eyes for consistency.
Yep.
I see that here. Thank you.
Lauren, I'm curious, and Jeremy too, like on that month, when you're a certain tenure in your career, do you put months still down, from a sequencing perspective, if you have, 9/18 to, sort of the dates on there? I'm just curious what you guys see, or you see broad years.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I definitely dropped the months.
Yeah.
It looks cleaner without it. It's just not relevant,
Just easier to follow too. Then it's a bunch of numbers together.
I drop a random question real quick. The bottom, like the interest, achievements, organizations, like that little thing, like what's appropriate, I guess, for interests, right? I don't want to name every sport I follow or play, etc. So that's something I've always been curious about.
Personal style, it's usually something you want to talk about. If you, I'm not always sure why people put stuff unless it really jumps out as something that they want to add color and humanize themselves. It can help. Like if you think that you're coming in like, hey, watch out, I'm this Green Beret and I'm super badass, but you can flip that. You have interests that are cooking or, something that could soften it, or the other way. It's a very plain vanilla investment banker profile that looks like everything else is at the same schools and everything. And they want to add some kind of personal color, then I'd add it. But it's totally up to the person and whether or not it fits. I wouldn't mess up your formatting to try to shove something in. To really get excited about talking about it. But it can be a way to create softer conversation and points of connection.
Mm-hmm.
If the person reading it doesn't have a military background, there's probably not much on this resume they can connect with. So that might give them another way to say, oh, well, let's talk about this and get to know you a little bit better.
All right, personalize it. And then my other thought was like, it just kind of potentially presents that like well-roundedness that may not come out in the rest of it.
Right.
I think I looked at Matthews' resume and he had on there like, awards. So things that were related to the military, which I thought was interesting. Volunteer experience, if you're continuing to volunteer. And then he does have hobbies on here, but they're very benign. So they're kind of vanilla. I would make sure whatever you put on there, you would be comfortable, having a conversation with at a dinner party. And then any of your clearance too, I think is important. So if you have, any top secret clearance, I would call that out, and that's all very clean in Matthew's resume. I don't know if you guys see each other's resumes, but I think that has a good, call out on the bottom from his perspective. But yeah, if you add anything like, that would put you up for judgment, that's where I would draw the line, because it just exposes you again, like your picture, what is the risk reward there? You just have to factor that in, that you're interfacing with another human being who has their own inherent biases.
Thank you.
You good, Victor?
Yeah, and thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I'll make those changes.
I will call it there. Does anyone have any other last minute questions? Jordan already hopped. I know he had a meeting at 5:30. But to finish this out, does anyone have last minute questions regarding just overall resumes and all? Maybe next 5 minutes or however long? Everyone good? Oh, go for it, Peyton.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find the mute button. Jeremy and Mara especially, how do your organizations receive a resume with kind of fairly heavy military language from an experience standpoint? And when you look at that, because what I've been kind of told is like, you don't want to make it an effort for the hiring manager or the talent resource group to kind of have to figure out what it is your military experience was and how that translates to what you're looking for. So it seems like there's generally two schools of thought as far as like, hey, kind of mute the military language so it becomes less daunting for maybe a less, I don't know, say indoctrinated, but less exposed person to these kind of communities. There's other ones that, and you guys, you both are obviously very familiar. So you're like, oh, Green Beret this and Ranger that, and you're very comfortable, right? But we can't predict that necessarily. So what are your thoughts generally, and I don't want to necessarily put you on the spot too much here, on the level or type and kind of military language used to convey experience?
Do you want to handle that one, Jeremy, and then I'll weigh in?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the earlier topic about that header paragraph that translates a lot. So it frames your thinking instead of it going like 05 and all that, where you're getting caught up into something they might not understand. You're framing their brain up front saying, I'm an organizational leader, or I'm a whatever type executive. And I would not be afraid to use the word executive about yourself. It still applies, even though it was in a different setting. It's still an executive role. And so don't be shy about that. But it goes back to Jordan's point, translating to the slang like Green Beret just helps.
Yeah. And I would say you should assume, for the most part, the people you're interfacing with really have no baseline knowledge of military. I would just assume that your end consumer is somebody you're going to have to educate. And, I think you should just operate under that assumption that you have to make it as easy as possible for the buyer. And they'll probably, even people who have worked in helping, veterans work, translate into sort of civilian work, we still have a huge learning curve. I mean, I still, every time I do one of these calls, I walk away just amazed at what you guys have accomplished. And, I just find myself being really passionate about wanting to get you guys, access to opportunities to put these awesome skill sets to have, because we struggle to find really good, competent executives all the time. And so, macro level, it's just the story you have to tell. You're just telling a story. And all that authenticity and all that stuff that you guys have accomplished, that really just needs to be rewarded and acknowledged in a way. And so, I just want to say, if I can be of help, if you guys have any questions after this, if you want me to take a look at your resume, I'm happy to do that. If you send me a note and tell me what you're looking for, I'll keep my eyes and ears open, and a lot of times that's how you find your best opportunities, through networking, through people. So be very clear about what you want and say, this is what I think I'm good at. This is where I think I can add value. This is where I think my skills can translate. Can you help me? And if you just say, can you help me? There are a lot of good people out there in the world. And so offering it up, people like myself will bend over backwards. I have tons of friends at other funds. I know almost every single talent partner at every other PE fund. Like, it just takes an email from somebody like myself or Jeremy or somebody else or Erin, to Lauren to go make those connections. So ask, and I think you'll have a lot of people in your corner. So.
Yeah. And I don't want to confuse you back to the earlier point. I would actually, if you're going to pursue very military focused jobs or intelligence jobs, so let's say you're going to apply at booze to do some kind of civilian work at the fort, have a separate resume that's all the military speak. But for the business side, for us, then you want to have it more translated into English, as Jordan calls it. Don't torture yourself thinking, well, somebody just told me this, somebody told me that. Those are two very different audiences, so don't be shy about having two totally different resumes.
Awesome. I really appreciate the feedback from both of you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Mara, Jeremy, you're still on. Thank you so much for this. I know I speak for everyone here. That was super appreciated. We'll cut the recording because I think I'm still recording. Yeah.